Greetings, wanderer. How are you? And where are you watching from today? In this video, we will explore awakening from collective and personal illusions through the practice of mindfulness and an honest encounter with the shadow. What if everything you call yourself is merely an echo of others' voices, woven into a web of habits? Do you know that your proudest beliefs might be invisible chains, forbidden to those who fear the abyss of truth? These words will unveil the mechanisms that hold you captive. Embark on this journey, and a map to inner freedom, woven from silence and light, will unfold before you. The world seemed unbreakable, like an ancient monolith carved from habits and beliefs. Each day mirrored the one before. Steps, words, thoughts flowed along invisible rails, etched by years. But one day, a crack appeared in this smooth surface of reality, faint, as thin as a hair. It emerged when life's rhythm stumbled on a strange coincidence, a number repeating on a clock, a phrase overheard in a crowd, or a glance caught in a shop window's reflection, as if not your own. These signs, so simple and fleeting, began to whisper, "Something is amiss." The person, guided by this whisper, paused for the first time. They gazed at the world they had always taken for granted and noticed inconsistencies. Why do the same reactions flare up to familiar triggers? Why do thoughts, believed to be their own, echo others' voices, parents, teachers, screens? These questions needed no answers, yet their presence shifted the gaze. Reality, once whole, began to fracture into fragments, like a mosaic, where each piece hid another layer. Ancient texts, whether mystic scrolls or poets' lines, speak of an awakening moment. It is not a thunderous roar, not a sudden revelation, but a quiet crack breaking the familiar. The person standing at this fracture's edge feels the world grow fragile. They see their actions following invisible scripts, not written by them. Work, conversations, even dreams, all suddenly seemed steeped in automation, as if someone else had long decided how to live. Yet in this crack, in this rupture, possibility was born. Observing coincidences, a number on a clock, a shadow in a window, the person sensed something greater lurking behind. Not a god, not fate, but a subtle hint of an order the mind could not yet grasp. Each sign was a thread leading inward, to a place where illusions ceased to be invisible. Awareness, still faint like the first ray of light, pierced through the veil of habits. It whispered, "Look closer, and you will see how the world deceives." This first step required no grand actions. It was enough to pause, breathe, and notice how a thought, ready to leap from the tongue, arose not from freedom, but from old patterns. In this observation, the crack widened, offering a glimpse into the self's depths. The world did not change, yet it was no longer the same. The subtle fracture in reality's canvas became a door to a truth no one imposed. In the silence born of the first fracture, the person began to notice something else. Like shadows on a cave's walls, images and signs rose from the depths of memory. They were familiar, yet alien. A spiral on an old coin, a pattern in a book stumbled upon in a dusty shop, or a phrase carried by the wind in a nocturnal forest. These symbols, scattered across time and cultures, spoke a language the mind could not yet decipher. They were ancient as the stars and alive as breath. Drawn by curiosity, the person sought their traces. In the lines of forgotten myths, on clay tablets, in shamans' songs, they found echoes of one truth. Perception is a filter, not the truth. Ancient teachings, from Egyptian mysteries to Buddhist sutras, whispered that the world, seemingly solid, is but a fabric woven from habits. They offered a key. Observe a thought as one would a cloud drifting across the sky, without clinging to it. This simple act was the dawn of liberation. Yet the signs did more than teach. They beckoned. In a chance encounter, a fragment of a dream, or a number repeating on a street sign, the person saw hints of a path. Each moment was a thread leading through the labyrinth of illusions. The ancients hid no truth. They left it in plain sight, woven into the fabric of existence. A spiral, a circle, the shadow of an eagle in the sky. These were letters of an alphabet the soul read without words. They said, pause, look, awaken. Observing thoughts became the first step. The person noticed how the mind clung to old stories. I must. This is right. This is how it's done. These phrases, once taken for truth, were revealed as borrowed voices from the past. Ancient texts called this process awakening. Not loud, but meticulous, like untying a tight knot. Each moment the person caught a thought at its birth sparked a flicker of freedom. A thought, seen in its arising, lost its power. Thus, the person began gathering fragments of ancient wisdom, scattered in the mundane. Every sign, every coincidence became a marker on the map of the inner journey. They promised no salvation, but offered a tool, a tension, sharp as a blade. With this tool, illusions, once unyielding, began to tremble. The world, previously opaque, grew transparent, and the person became its witness, not its puppet. As the person began peering into their thoughts, the familiar cozy world bristled. Like a sentinel guarding ancient walls, it rose against the new gaze. Each step into awareness met an inner protest. The mind clung to familiar paths where all was predictable. Routine rituals, morning coffee, habitual complaints, recurring arguments, suddenly gained weight, like anchors holding a ship in place. This rebellion was not loud, but stubborn, like the murmur of a crowd demanding a return to slumber. Fear, subtle and nearly invisible, rose from the depths. It disguised itself as common sense. Why change what works? The mind conjured reasons to protect old habits. This is too hard, it said when the person tried to notice how automation governed their words. Everything is fine as it is, it whispered when silence began to unveil the lie. These excuses were not mere thoughts. They were guardians of illusions, woven from comfort and fear of change. Yet the closer the person observed, the clearer the cracks became. They noticed how reactions, seemingly spontaneous, followed rehearsed scripts. Anger in response to criticism, a smile for praise. These were not theirs, but borrowed from a world where others set the rules. Ancient teachings warned of this. The old world does not yield without a fight. It clings to every habit, every belief, for in them lies its power. Resistance came not only from within. The outer world began to press as well. Friends, accustomed to the old version of the person, noticed their detachment and demanded a return to normalcy. Society, like a mirror, reflected expectations. Be like everyone else. Ask no questions. But each time the person chose a pause over a reaction, they slipped from these shackles. Silence, even fleeting, became a shield against automation. This battle was not with the world, but with the self. In moments when the person saw the mind pulling them back, they found strength. Each caught thought, each recognized pattern weakened the grip of the old world. Illusions, once unyielding, cracked under the pressure of awareness, like ice beneath spring's weight. The person learned to stand in this rift, yielding neither to fear nor habit, and saw the world, resisting change, begin to relent. Amid the clamor of the familiar world, the person discovered another space. It opened not at once, but in rare moments when thoughts, as if weary from their endless race, grew still. This was silence, not merely the absence of sound, but something alive, profound, like an ocean without waves. It arose in pauses, between an inhale and exhale, between the urge to respond and the response itself. In these fleeting gaps, fragile as gossamer, the person felt free from the invisible threads pulling them toward old roles. Silence was daunting yet alluring. The mind, accustomed to motion, resisted it like a child fearing the dark. Thoughts flared, demanding attention. Plans, fears, memories swirled like a flock of birds unwilling to rest. But the person learned not to fight, but to observe. They noticed how each thought, each impulse, arose not from their will, but from old habits. "This is mine," the mind claimed, appropriating foreign voices, but in silence, they dissolved like echoes in a desert. In these pauses, a new perspective emerged. The person saw how much of what they called themselves was mere reflection. Others' expectations, society's rules, fears absorbed from childhood. Silence exposed them, like light falling on worn fabric, revealing its fray. It held no judgment, only clarity. Each time the person lingered in this void, resisting the urge to fill it with action, they found a space where choice was born free. The ancients called this sacred repose. In sutras, in hermits' songs, in mystics' lines, silence was the door to truth. Not loud revelations, but these quiet gaps between thoughts unveiled the essence. The person learned to dwell in them, to stretch them, like a thread growing stronger with each moment. In silence, they heard not words, but the rhythm of their own being, untainted by foreign voices. Thus, silence became a sanctuary. It promised no answers, but offered a space where questions ceased to matter. Each entry into it was a breaking of chains binding the person to automation. The noisy world remained beyond the threshold, and within, clarity arose. What seemed I was but a mask, and beneath it, freedom awaiting its hour. In the depths of silence, the person began to discern a subtle language. It was not made of words, but spoke clearer than any speech. Symbols, like stars in a night sky, appeared everywhere, in the curve of a branch, in a puddle's reflection, in a stray line caught by the eye in a crowd. These signs, ancient as time itself, needed no reasoning. They spoke to the soul, bypassing the mind. Each was a key, unlocking layer after layer of hidden truth. The person noticed them more often. A 3, repeating on house numbers, a circle traced by the wind in sand, or a shadow falling in a way that recalled wings. These images were not random. They formed an alphabet the soul read effortlessly. In ancient traditions, from alchemical treatises to shamanic songs, symbols were called bridges between the seen and unseen. They did not explain but pointed, look deeper, beyond the familiar. Each sign was a mirror reflecting the inner world. The person saw their fears, desires, and beliefs manifest in these symbols, as if nature itself held a dialogue with their essence. Noticing them shifted something within. The automation governing thoughts lost its grip. The mind, accustomed to explaining everything, stumbled, finding no words, and in that stumbling, clarity arose. Symbols taught, do not seek answers, simply be a witness. Awareness, honed in silence, became the key to their understanding. The person learned not to cling to signs, but to let them speak. In dreams, where labyrinths turned into spirals, or in chance encounters, where a stranger's glance carried a message, they saw instructions. These required no faith, only attention. Each recognized symbol peeled away another layer of programming, revealing a space where choice was not a reaction, but an act of freedom. Thus, the language of symbols became a guide. It promised no end to the journey, but showed the direction. Following these signs, the person felt the world come alive, speaking, full of meaning. Reality, once seeming chaotic, gained a rhythm, like a heart beating in unison with their own. In this rhythm, they found vigilance, not tense, but light, like breath, ready to see the truth behind every sign. In the glow of growing awareness, the person encountered what had long been hidden. The shadow, silent and unseen, began to take shape. It was not an enemy, yet its presence stirred unease. Fear, guilt, shame, buried deep, now gazed directly back. They appeared in fleeting memories, in dreams of running from something faceless, in stray words that cut deeper than usual. The shadow did not attack. It waited to be seen. The person tried to turn away, but the light of awareness was relentless. Each time they noticed their reactions, a flare of anger, a sting of envy, an urge to hide, the shadow grew clearer. It was woven from all they had denied: mistakes buried in excuses, desires deemed unworthy, fears concealed behind a mask of strength. Ancient teachings called this a meeting with the self, not the hero, but the one dwelling in shadows. Acknowledging the shadow was painful yet necessary. The person learned not to flee, but to stand before it. They saw how fear of being seen governed their words, how shame made them lie to themselves. In each such moment, they found a choice: reject the shadow or embrace it. Embracing it was not defeat, it was an act of strength. The moment they said, "This is me too," the shadow lost its power, dissolving in the light of understanding. This process was purification. The shadow, once seen, ceased to be a monster. It became a part that could be understood, embraced, healed. Ancient mystics said the shadow was a guardian of inner light. Only by meeting it could the person step toward freedom, unburdened by lies. Each acknowledgement, each moment of honesty with themselves, broke the old chains woven from denial. Thus, the shadow became a teacher. It did not vanish, but its face changed. In it, the person saw not only pain, but strength, the kind born from the courage to be honest. The world around, once seeming a judge, began to reflect this new clarity. Meeting the shadow was not an end, but a beginning. Now the person walked with open eyes, ready to see all that lay hidden in the depths of their soul. Having faced the shadow, the person began to see the fragility of their foundations. Beliefs once thought unshakable now trembled, like a house of cards in the wind. Many truths upon which life was built revealed themselves as foreign. Rules absorbed from family, dogmas imposed by society, fears mistaken for wisdom. These supports, once holding up their world, now appeared as shadows woven from dependence. Awareness, sharp as a blade, cut through them one by one. Each such foundation was an anchor, tethering them to old scripts. The person saw how faith in the right path made them echo others' words, how fear of judgment dictated their actions. Teachings, once deemed sacred, often rested on control. Do this, and you'll be saved. But in the silence, now their companion, they heard another voice, one that demanded no submission. It promised no rewards, but offered freedom. The freedom to choose without fear. Dismantling these supports was painful. The mind clung to the familiar like a lifeline. Who am I without these rules? What happens if I let go? Yet each time the person refused to follow the old ways, they found a space. It was empty, but not frightening. In this void, their own truth was born. The ancients called this a return to the source, not to dogmas, but to a clarity needing no validation. Breaking with false foundations was not rebellion. It was a quiet, firm resolve to reject what held them captive. The person noticed how the world, friends' voices, society's expectations, even the rhythm of daily life, tried to pull them back. But in each such moment, they chose silence, free of foreign voices. There, in that pure space, they found strength independent of external authorities. Thus, the break with false foundations became an act of liberation. The person sought no new dogmas to replace the old. Instead, They learned to stand in the void where choice arose from inner clarity. The world, once a judge, began to reflect this freedom. Reality, cleansed of others' scripts, became not a threat, but a canvas for creation, where every step was their own. When the last supports crumbled, the person found themselves in the unknown. Emptiness, once seeming cold and alien, now unfolded like a boundless sky. It was not bleak, not a threat. It was a space where all old voices faded. Thoughts, used to filling every corner of consciousness, slowed, dissolving in this silence. The person stood on the threshold of a new home, without walls, but filled with freedom. This emptiness was daunting in its vastness. The mind, accustomed to clinging to rules, goals, meaning, sought something to grasp. But in this space, nothing could be called mine. Fears, ambitions, even dreams, once so vital, melted like shadows in light. Ancient mystics called this a return to the source of being, a place where there's no need to prove oneself, where choice arises not from fear, but from clarity. The person learned to live in this emptiness. They noticed how every impulse, to act, to speak, to judge, arose and faded if not clung to. In this freedom from attachments, they found strength. Not the kind that fights, but the kind that allows being. Emptiness became a mirror, reflecting their essence without distortion. In it, they saw not absence, but possibility. A blank page where their truth could be written. Each step in this space was new. The person found that even simple acts, breathing, gazing at the sky, stepping on grass, gained depth when done consciously. The world, once chaotic, began to reflect this inner silence. Trees, clouds, even the city's noise became part of a unified rhythm, needing no explanation. Emptiness taught. Do not seek meaning. Become it. Thus, emptiness became home. It offered no comfort, but granted a peace independent of the external. Standing in this space, the person felt not lost, but found. Reality, cleansed of old scripts, opened as a field where every choice was an act of creation. In this emptiness, they found themselves, not as a set of roles, but as a living presence, ready to meet the world without masks. Freed from old chains, the person began to see the world anew. Reality, once seeming fixed, now flowed like a river, ready to take a new course. Thoughts, words, actions, once bound to others' scripts, gained new weight. Each became a brush with which the person painted their life. Awareness, honed in silence, turned even mundane gestures into rituals filled with meaning. A simple breath, a glance, a step, all became acts of creation. The person noticed how their choices reshaped the world around them. A word spoken with clarity, not habit, shifted the tone of a conversation. An action born from inner silence, not fear, created ripples that touched others. Even small things, choosing to smile, to pause, or to take a different path, wove a new pattern. Ancient teachings spoke of this. Reality is a canvas you weave with every moment, if done with an open heart. But this rewriting was not easy. The mind, still recalling old patterns, sometimes tried to slip back into automation. In moments of fatigue or doubt, it whispered, "Why bother? It's already decided." But the person, having tasted freedom, knew each such moment was a choice. They learned to pause, breathe, return to silence, where decisions arose not from the past, but from the present. This practice became their alchemy, turning chaos into order. The world began to reflect this inner clarity. People, events, even chance encounters seemed to align with this new rhythm. Where conflict once loomed, dialogue emerged. Where fear stood, possibility appeared. The person realized, reality does not impose itself. It responds. Every conscious action, Every choice made from emptiness, not habit, rewrote its lines. Life became not a struggle, but a dance. Thus, the person became a creator, not in grand feats, but in the quiet strength of each step. The everyday, once confining, turned into a spiritual practice. Reality, cleansed of illusions, revealed itself as a living fabric, ready for a new pattern. The person walked through it, knowing each choice was a stitch in the tapestry they wove themselves. The person, having rewritten reality, stepped into a new world. Illusions that once bound them dissolved like morning mist under the sun. Reality remained complex, full of contradictions, but now it was transparent. They saw it as it was, not an enemy, not a judge, but a living stream where every moment was a choice. Masks they once wore, roles, expectations, fears, lay behind, unneeded like old clothing. Living without a mask meant standing openly before the world. The person no longer hid behind habitual reactions or sought approval in others' eyes. Their words, actions, even silence became reflections of inner truth, not others' scripts. They noticed how simple gestures, a nod, a glance, a pause, gained power when born from clarity. The world responded to this honesty. People, events, even chance aligned with their essence. But this freedom was not easy. The mind, still recalling old paths, sometimes tried to return to familiar patterns. In moments of weakness, it whispered, "Pretend, it's simpler." But the person, having tasted silence, knew. Each attempt to don a mask was a step backward. They chose to stay in the present, where every choice was an act of courage. The ancients called this authentic life, not fleeing from pain, but meeting it without deceit. Each day became a practice. The person learned to see beauty in the world's imperfection, in its chaotic truth. They sought no ideals, awaited no salvation. They created their reality here and now. Conflicts, fears, joys, all became part of a stream they embraced without resistance. In this openness, they found peace, untouched by external storms. Thus, life without a mask became their home. The person walked through the world, neither hiding their light nor fearing their shadow. Reality, cleansed of illusions, opened as a space where every step was free. They knew. Freedom was not the absence of challenges, but the choice to meet them with a clear heart. And in this choice, they found themselves alive, whole, infinite.